Alright, hello everybody, and this is lesson number 6. I'm having trouble keeping track on what lesson number we're actually on, but this is the next lesson about our nervous system. So we're still talking about neurons. This video will probably be shorter than the last one. The last one, if you remember, we were talking about the structure of neurons. And today's lesson, we're going to focus on the functionality of neurons. So here we go. So functional classification of neurons. So we know from, I think it was like lesson number 1 or 2, right at the beginning, that we have the afferent division and the efferent division. Okay, and if we were in class, I would ask you, okay, afferent, where does that take the signal? And hopefully you would tell me that it takes the signal away from the stimulus to the central nervous system. So that division, that afferent division, has afferent neurons. Okay, sometimes we refer to these as sensory neurons because they're going to pick up messages from the sensory nerves, okay, and then carry them to the central nervous system. All right, so carry impulses from sensory receptors to central nervous system. And so this can be an example of these would be your cutaneous sense organs. Okay, hopefully that cutaneous word sounds familiar. Cutaneous referring to skin, that dry membrane, the cutaneous membrane. Okay, so like when your fingers touch something hot or cold or prickly or slippery, okay, all of those different textures send different messages to your brain. In your muscles, you have a lot of proprioceptors, and proprioceptors are afferent neurons that detect stretch or tension. A lot of times these these which are found in your muscles are responsible for like that achiness feeling that you'll feel whenever, like, if you worked out a lot and your muscles are kind of sore and kind of tense. Those are your proprioceptors at work. They detect the stretch or that tension because that's your body's way of saying, all right, this muscle's a little sore, it's healing, maybe don't go and run 12 miles today. And so with your afferent neurons, okay, they are either going to be unipolar or bipolar neurons. Now, when I say the word bipolar in the nervous system, at least when we're talking about neurons, maybe I should be more specific, that is not referring to like the mental disorder bipolarism. Okay, when we're talking about unipolar and bipolar neurons, we're talking about kind of how they're shaped. And so if you take a look at this chart right here, you can kind of see some of them. Yesterday, or the last lesson I should say, we were focusing on the multipolar neurons because we see these the most often, especially within the central nervous system themselves. But your peripheral nervous system, which is where we find your afferent and your efferent neurons, are going to have a lot of these too. Okay, so your afferent neurons will have some unipolar and some bipolar. Now, the difference between the two, or the reason we name them unipolar and bipolar based on how many attachments they have coming off of the cell body. So in your unipolar, uni meaning one, you only have one attachment coming from your cell body. Okay? For your bipolar, okay, there's two attachments coming from your cell body. And then multipolar, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attachment points. Okay, so there's that difference between your basic neuron types. Now your efferent motor neurons, okay, are going to be the ones that come from the central nervous system to the effectors, which a lot of times are muscles or hormone regulators. Okay, so carry impulses away from central nervous system, and they are multipolar oftentimes because they are going to be the ones that literally tell the effectors what the brain is saying. So a lot of times with your muscles, because your muscles are more complicated than just your cutaneous sense organs, we'll see that these come into play a little more often than in the afferent. Alright, so we have afferent, we have efferent, and then we have interneurons. Okay, so interneurons are going to be association neurons, and they are found in neural pathways in the central nervous system. And these are the connectors between the sensory and the motor neurons. These are the most abundant type of neuron, and they are multipolar. And so basically, these are just the connection points. A lot of times we find them within the brain or at the bottom of the brain, which just serve as that little segment to actually connect the two, or does the talking between the two. So if we were to look here, okay, we've got kind of a weird picture here. And we've got a peripheral nervous system down here. We've got a spinal cord here, which is going to take that message up to the brain. And so if we look, here's our sensory neuron, or our afferent neuron in blue. And then the efferent is in red. Okay, so this would be, for example, some of your cutaneous sense receptors, ones found in the skin, okay, or maybe the ones that say, hey, my muscle's a little sore. Okay? It's going to send that message to spinal cord, go up to the brain's going to determine if we need to do anything about it. It's going to send it back down. Now this little green guy right here is called an association or an interneuron. He's the one that does a lot of the communication between all of this going on. And so he's going to be the one that communicates that message to the red neuron here, which is the efferent neuron, which is going to take stuff from that central nervous system to the effectors to hopefully have some sort of result. And here we go again, just looking at how these guys are kind of built. So we've already talked about multipolar neurons. They have a lot of extensions from the cell body. And they're what we typically see when we're looking at diagrams on like practice worksheets and things like that, just because we actually tend to have more of these guys around. They're also the more complicated ones, so a lot of times they'll show you the more complicated ones, because the unipolar and the bipolar aren't as complex as cells. Alright, so remember, multipolar, you have many attachment or many extensions coming from that cell body. Okay, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, if I counted right. Alright, so a whole bunch, multipolar. Bipolar means we have two, that prefix bi means two attachments. Okay, and one attachment would be the axon, the other one would be considered the dendrite. Okay, and usually the cell body floats kind of in the middle. These are used a lot with the special senses, so that includes your sense of sight, like your optic nerve is a bipolar neuron. Your sense of taste, touch, even some of your auditory neurons, so like the ones that allow you to like hear, okay, are going to be bipolar neurons. And then unipolar neurons, not quite as common. They do have a short single process leaving the cell body. So here's your cell body. There's just one extension coming from it. So the cell body is kind of floating off to the side of the cell. And then this whole thing is the axon. And then we have dendrites at the end. Okay, and an axon terminal would be down here. And I think I'm going to leave this for another video clip because I don't want to rush through it. So go ahead, answer the questions involved, and then we're going to finish up neuron stuff. We're going to finish up neuron stuff later on, probably next lesson. Okay? Sorry, I'm getting 3 text messages from Mr. Ditlevson, so I was reading and talking at the same time, and you know I can't do both. Alright, so I hope you guys have a good day. I will talk to you later.